Bonjour et bienvenue au Tour de France chez VeloVoices.
VeloVoices. Many voices, one passion. Pro cycling for fans by fans.
Hello and welcome to our VeloVoices podcast number lucky 13, actually, our Tour de France preview. And thank you to our wonderful Cherie, who will be providing our French pronunciation this time instead of the way we butchered the Giro last time. And of course, I'm joined by Tim and Kathy. You guys, how you guys doing?
I'm great, thanks.
Yeah, doing great, thanks.
So we're going to be talking Tour de France today.
Woo-hoo!
We're going to spend a lot of time on it. We're going to be talking about, obviously, the parcours and who we think the key players are and our picks of the stages and why we love the Tour. And then we're going to talk about some exciting news about how you can follow the Tour with the VeloVoices during the next, I guess it starts in a week, so the next 4 weeks, because we'll have some stuff right before the Tour as well. But before we jump into that, it's been an exciting day, and I've been glued to Twitter all day just trying to see the results tally in from all the different national road championships from around Europe. And this is quite a list that's come in so far. And this isn't everybody, by the way, but this is just the ones that I've been able to find. So in Switzerland, we had Mickey Schär win. In Italy, we had Ivan Santaromita win. The Gorilla won the German National Road Race Championship, Andre Greipel. Peter Sagan had really no trouble winning in Slovakia. Jan Barta won the Czech championships. Michael Morkov won in Denmark. Robert Kieselowski won in Croatia. Johnny Hoogerland won in the Netherlands. I just love that. Arthur Vichot won in France, which I also think is cool. Thor Hushoff won in Norway.
Which is just amazing.
It is, and good for him. And Mark Cavendish won in Great Britain today, beating David Miller and Ian Stannard in the finale. What a race by Cavendish. So I wanted to talk about this. And Kitty wanted to remind everybody that last week, Fabs won his 8th national time trial championship in Switzerland.
Yay!
But I wanted to just hear Tim's thoughts on seeing Mark Cavendish this whole next year in the championship colors of Great Britain. Tim.
Oh, it's going to be fantastic, isn't it? Amazingly, it's the first time that Cavs ever won the British National Road Race. So, yeah, it'll be great to see him in the colours of the Union flag.
Yeah, it seems like it's long overdue. I don't know why. It seems like, why hasn't he been this before? But it is fantastic. And it'll be interesting to see what Quick Step actually does with the jersey. So hopefully it'll stand out. Anyway, congratulations to all those guys. And there's a lot more that's going on, and the results haven't all come in yet. But for the national federations, it's a time for these riders to shine. And there's a lot of new names here. And there's a lot of names that we've seen before, so it's a nice mix. All right, well, let's jump right into the 100th Tour de France. And before we just jump into reviewing the stages, we wanted to tell you about why we love the Tour. For me, I'll start. For me, the Tour is really where sport and theater meet. And if you look at the script over the last 100 years, it's really Shakespearean in nature. I don't think there's really anything in the world like it, especially not in sport. I love the tradition of it, the pageantry of it, and it's really the time when the entire world is watching the sport of professional cycling, and it's why the teams bring their best to this party. Tim, what about you?
Oh, Shakespearean. Oh, I do like that as a description for it. Out damn polka dot, presumably. I think you kind of covered it. Yeah, the Tour de France is the one race in cycling which is recognised on a global scale, and much so the Giro is my favourite of the 3 Grand Tours, and I do also love the Vuelta. This is the race that the best of the best want to win, and the best of the best do win it. Anquetil, Merckx, Eno, Indurain, Contador. I mean, okay, there was Oscar Pereiro, but he's the exception that proves the rule. Really, it's a race that's steeped in history, tradition, and legend, and no other race produces the kind of melodrama and the glamour that the way the Tour does.
Yeah, and how about you, Kathy?
Well, it was the first race that I really started watching. It's the race that brought me into really loving cycling, and I think that is pretty much the norm for a lot of fans. So, there's a certain sentimental quality to it. It's also it's just a razzle dazzle of a race. I mean, they know what they're doing. I love the caravans, and the that throw the Haribo out. Oh, anything that throws Haribo at me is but then there's also, I go to the Champs every year to see the end, and every single year there really is nothing quite like seeing the Maillot Jaune just ride onto the Champs for the first time on that final Sunday. And it just, it's just so very exciting. Everybody brings their A game. There's a lot of crying all through that. It's on the podiums and the peloton and the finish line. It's great. Everybody's crying.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic this year, too. I mean, what they've done with the 100th edition and the parcours and even the final day that you're talking about, Kathy, they're going to actually be riding around the Champs this year. I mean, around the Arc de Triomphe at the end of the Champs. So they've taken it to a whole new level this year, having the evening finish, and it's going to be fantastic. All right. And I think arguably a lot of people who watch professional cycling can say that the Tour de France is the race that originally sucked them into becoming a fan.
Yeah.
So it's the thing that brings people in droves because it is so exciting. It's so melodramatic, just like Tim was talking about. And the stories and the things that we see there, a lot of them border on miraculous for many reasons. But it is such a wonderful view of humanity for 3 weeks in France. So, all right. Well, let's talk about what the organizers have done this year for the 100th Tour. What we did this time, many of you can probably remember our Giro preview, how Kathy and I in particular, me mostly, butchered the Italian pronunciations. Thank goodness we had Tim, and even Tim made a couple mistakes. But we've asked our dear Sherry to actually pronounce the stage names for us. So she's going to introduce each stage, and then we'll describe it.
Stage 1, Porto Vecchio to Bastia.
Stage 1. We're off to a great start. Stage 1. It's a pan-flat point-to-point blast, which will see, in all probability, one of the sprinters draw first blood, both in the points competition and in terms of earning the right to pull on the yellow jersey.
Yeah, so this is where hopefully a Mark Cavendish maybe could wear yellow in the Tour. So exciting stuff.
Stage 2, Bastia to Ajaccio.
Stage 2 is 156 kilometers, and it's medium mountains. This is the soonest a mountain stage has come into the Tour in, I think, ever. There's a double punch of a Cat 3 and a Cat 2 in the middle of the stage that'll split things up quite nicely. And apparently Andy Schleck has been rumored to have reconned this stage. So, who knows?
Oh, I don't think so. But okay.
Stage 3, Ajaccio to Calvi.
Stage 3 is 145.5 kilometers. It's another kind of medium mountain stage. And Tim, you would describe this as lumpy as anything.
I would.
Yeah, there is no flat roads on this. And this is the last stage that we have in Corsica. And I would expect to see the likes of Thomas Voeckler, who we just had Thomas Voeckler day 4, attack on this stage and really try to claim yellow here before going to the mainland in France.
Stage 4, team time trial around Nice.
Stage 4 is the 25-kilometre team time trial. It's relatively short, flat, and not particularly technical. So it should be all about power and aero efficiency. Put your money on Sky or Omega Pharma Quickstep, two teams who are loaded with big engines.
Stage 5, Cagnes-sur-Mer to Marseille.
Stage 5 is a 228 kilometer rolling stage, and anything could happen on this one because there's some unpredictable winds that could split the peloton asunder, catching some of the guys unaware, as we've seen in earlier editions of the tour.
Stage 6, Aix-en-Provence to Montpellier.
Yeah, Kathy, and stage 6 is 176 kilometers, and it's flat. It's not too long, and it's made for sprinters, but just like stage 5, the wind and the heat could be a factor. If you remember Contador in 2009 kind of getting caught behind. But this is where green jersey contenders will have to be attentive, and they will be all battling at the end.
Stage 7, Montpellier to Albi.
Okay, stage 7, 205.5 kilometres. It's a kind of a flat stroke rolling stage. It could well end in a bunch finish, but the sprinters teams will have to work hard for it on a day which features 4 categorised climbs.
Stage 8, Castres to Axe-3 de Maine.
Stage 8 is 195 kilometers of high mountains, and this is the first of this year's HC mountains, the Col de Paleuse. Hey. And that's the highest climb of the race, which goes over 2,000 meters, which they'll start climbing 131 kilometers into the stage, and it's a summit finish on the Axe-3 de Maine, and that could shake the GC up.
Stage 9, Saint-Girons to Bagnères de Bigorre.
Yeah, and then stage 9 is this 168.5 kilometer high mountains. It's a short stage, but it's extremely difficult with 1 Cat 2 and 4 Cat 1 climbs, including the legendary Col de Peyrasourde. And I expect riders like Cadel Evans trying to gain some time on Sky here on the descents.
Yeah, and watch the polka dot jersey contenders go as well. So look out for the man with the tongue.
Yeah. And then we have a rest day.
Stage 10, Saint-Gildas-des-Bois to Saint-Malo.
Okay, picking up from the rest day, stage 10, 193 kilometres and change. It should be a fairly routine day for the sprinters, but there is a nasty little kick-up just inside 4 kilometres to go, where we could well see some attacks, and it could well be a day when we see a puncher get away and spoil the party for the fast men.
Stage 11, Avranches to Mont-Saint-Michel.
Stage 11 is a 33-kilometer individual time trial, and this is a time trial for the specialists, so the money goes on Tony Martin to win. Froome and Port are likely to pick up some time, but it's not actually long enough to kill the race down dead. Please, God, don't let it. A change of wind in the last open 11 kilometers could play a part. Just think about the prologue and the Tour de Suisse. I mean, if the wind changes, it could change everything.
Yeah, that's going to be a beautiful stage as well. It's such a beautiful part of the world.
Stage 12, Fougères to Tours.
Stage 12 is 218 kilometers. It's pan flat. It's a long stage. It's made for sprinters who've basically survived the onslaught of the first mountains. And I expect a complete showdown here between Greipel, Cav, and Kittel. And of course, Sagan will try to spoil the party.
Stage 13, Tours to Saint-Armand-Montron.
Stage 13, 173 kilometres. It's an apparently innocuous day, which would appear at first sight to have bunch sprint written all over it, but there are 2 big traps awaiting the unwary. There's a short, sharp, uncategorised climb inside the final 10k, which could well disrupt the lead-out trains. And then there are 3 tight bends in quick succession in the final kilometre, which could see riders and bikes flying all over the place.
Looks like somebody's been reading the road book.
Oh, yes.
Stage 14, Saint-Pourçain-sur-Sioule to Lyon.
Right, stage 14 is 191 kilometers, and it's a rolling stage. This is made for a breakaway. Yet this is also the last stage that has a glimmer of a hope of a sprint finish until we get into Paris. So with 5 Cat 4s, 2 Cat 3s scattered along the parcours, this actually looks like a good stage for Sylvain Chavanel. But again, it could be one for Peter Sagan.
Stage 15, Gévaudan to Mont Ventoux.
Stage 15 is the longest stage of the Tour de France at 242.5 kilometers. And this is where the peloton will finish on the Giant of Provence, Mont Ventoux, which is nearly 21 kilometers long with an average gradient of 7.5%. If you're a GC rider and you have a bad day here, you could be losing minutes. And I'll be riding Ventoux this day, and it's also going to be Bastille Day, so I expect French riders to really be aggressive here. And then we have another rest day.
Stage 16, Vaison-la-Romaine to Gap.
Stage 16, 168k, just a medium mountain stage really. There's no summit finish, there's nothing more strenuous than a handful of Cat 2 climbs, but equally this is a stage where multiple attacks could create small but significant time gaps. We finish with a descent into Gap, which is tailor-made for attackers, and we've had combative riders such as Alex Vinokourov and Thor Hushovd win here before, so it's that kind of stage.
Yeah, and if it rains on this stage, it'll be a problem for guys that don't like to descend.
Oh yeah.
Stage 17, Embrun to Chorches.
Stage 17 is another individual time trial. Again, it's about 32 kilometers. This will be kinder to the climbers as it's more up than down, and it's not really that technical. The distance means that hopefully, again, there won't be a huge disparity in times amongst the GC guys, but it will probably put paid to anyone who's been hanging on by the skin of their teeth.
Stage 18, Gap to Alpe d'Huez.
Stage 18 sent shudders through the peloton when it was announced. It's 168.5 kilometers, and it has to be one of the most anticipated stages this year. It basically includes a double ascent of Alpe d'Huez with a summit finish there, and like Ventoux, I anticipate there will be time gaps here.
Stage 19, Bourg d'Oisans, Le Grand Bournon.
Okay, stage 19. Relatively speaking, this is the easy stage in between the two killer stages. Yeah, good luck with that. We've got two HC climbs early on, the Col du Glandon and the Col de la Madeleine, and then we've got a couple of Cat 1s near the end. If someone does have the courage and the energy to push hard over the final climb, they could well prosper on a fast 13-kilometer descent to the finish in Le Grand Bournon.
Stage 20, Annecy to Annecy.
Then on stage 20, this is it. It's 125 kilometers, which is kind of a short stage. It's all high mountains. Short, sharp, constant ups and downs. They start with a Cat 2, then 3 Cat 3s before the Cat 1 Mont Rivon, 80 kilometers in. Then it's back towards Annecy. I'm assuming I've butchered that, for a summit finish at Semnon, and I butchered that too. 11 kilometers climb at an average 8.5%. This is at the very end of the tour. It's a final fling that will probably settle the lower positions in the top 10, because I anticipate that the podium will be pretty much set by that time, unless somebody has just the worst day of their life.
Finally, Stage 21, Versailles to Paris, sur les Champs-Élysées.
Stage 21 then is just a thing of beauty. It's obviously the ceremonial stage. It's 133 kilometers. It's flat, and it finishes on in the evening in Paris on the Champs. They'll start at Versailles. They'll pass the Anquetil Memorial, and they'll go through the Louvre courtyard. So it's going to be unbelievable. And besides Cav lighting up his legs, hopefully in this stage for Tim, there's going to be fireworks at the end. So it's going to be a huge party, and it's what a way to go out and celebrate the 100th Tour de France. So that's really what we have to look forward to when it comes to the Tour this year. And I have to say that I think the parcours they're really exciting. We usually say that the Giro parcours are super exciting, but I think this year the Tour has really gone the extra mile, so to speak, to give us a parcours that's going to make the race really interesting.
I think they are realizing actually that they need to do something on par with the Giro.
Yeah.
Because everybody keeps talking about how great the Giro is. But also reading, I've done all the preview posts today, and it seems to me that the officials keep saying things like they're trying to make sure that Team Sky doesn't just make it a procession. They're trying to make sure that there's tactical, and then there's pure climbing, and then there's all this other stuff. So it's one of those routes that they're really mixing up.
Yeah, and Tim, those first 3 days in Corsica, I mean, first you're not starting with a prologue, which is interesting, but then to go from a kind of flat sprinter stage where a guy like Cavendish or Greipel could take the yellow to basically a classic style where guys like Chavanel or Sagan or Vogler could then be in yellow. I mean, it looks like the Meyer-Jorn could change hands quite frequently during this tour.
Yeah, absolutely, and not just the yellow jersey. I think you're absolutely right. The yellow jersey will change hands several times during the first 2 weeks, but also the green jersey and the polka dot jersey. I think we could see one of the more aggressive climbers or one of the puncheurs, maybe a Verkler or a Chavanel, quite possibly spend some time in the green jersey quite deep into the race, and the polka dot jersey won't be decided until that final trio of stages 18, 19 and 20. So it's all geared up for all the major competitions to be closely fought right through to the back end of the final week.
Yeah, I mean, this race is set up to keep people watching the entire 3 weeks, which is really cool. So, Kathi, we just listed 21 stages. All of them are pretty, in their way, unique. But which stage are you looking forward to the most?
I think one of them, because I'm looking forward to quite a few, is stage 15, which is Mont Ventoux. And the reason is because when the guys, the mountains kind of split in two things. So you have the forest to begin with, and that kind of can be quite claustrophobic and so it's quite stifling. So that's where the really steep inclines are as well. So the guys are going at it, and then they come through the forest, and they basically come onto some sort of apocalyptic lunar landscape that just looks like, when the sun is shining, which I kind of assume it's going to. I mean, you just must take one look at it and think, what am I doing? I mean, it just must really sap your spirit if you're not feeling very well, I've got to say. I think, we could see a really promising GC contender either left in the white dust by the side of the road, or we could see that same promising GC contender really put their stake in the ground and claim their place in Tour history.
Yeah, I'm riding that Mont Ventoux. I'm not riding the whole stage.
So we might look for you at the side of the road.
I might be dead on the side of the road, but when I tell people that I'm doing it, people who've done it write me back and they're like, Chris, you need to take extra bidons. You need to have 2 on your bike, and you need to have 2 in your jersey, because when you get up there in that lunar landscape, and if it's hot, there's nothing to drink up there.
Oh, God.
So you've really got to be prepared, and it's really easy to have a bad day on Ventoux, and when it's hot, you could lose up to 15-20 minutes GC time. So that will be a really fascinating stage.
I mean, I do think it's quite amazing, because last time, what was it, the one where Wiggins was at Garmin, and I think Tony Martin, was it Tony Martin that was up?
Yeah.
Nearly won it?
Yeah.
Do you know, the faces on them, I mean, they just looked like, they were in shock by the end of it. I mean, and hey, we're cycling fans. We love it when guys do that.
Right.
So, it's going to be a great stage.
Yeah. And that was a horrific day as well, because they were riding into, from what I remember, a fairly stiff headwind. And it's just, as you say, it's open, it's exposed, there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah. I'm hoping there's no wind when I go. The wind can start up as soon as the other riders come.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm really looking forward to stage 18, the 2 ascents of Alpe d'Huez. Are you kidding me? I mean, and one of the things that makes this really interesting, and we didn't really get to see it on television because they did ride this as part of the Dauphine, we didn't really get to see the descent on the backside. But, we read in the news lately that Tony Martin, speaking of, has been pretty vocal about how insanely dangerous he thinks this descent is. And, the guy who wins this stage, or guys who want to win this stage, can't take that descent gingerly, right? They're going to get up this thing the first time, and they are going to take super risk to get down the backside faster than everybody else, so then they get to start up the ascent again. So it's going to be really legendary. And I plan on sitting there on some hairpin turn, and I might even have to wear my VeloVoices mankini so that I can get onto television.
Oh, no. No! Could you imagine if you took a picture of that and sent it to John Galloway? His response to your pirate outfit was just amazing. I think that would be it. He would never be able to recover.
You know what? I might have to get a mankini that says "I love you, John Galloway," and just wear that.
Excellent.
Yeah. You know, they say there's no such thing as bad publicity. I'm not sure now.
We'll just disown him, Tim. We'll say, no, that's not panache. I don't know why people think it is.
That's it. It's just his lookalike.
Yeah,
There's some crazy guy wearing a VeloVoices mankini.
Yeah, where'd he
has
get
nothing
that?
to do with us. Yeah. All right, so Tim, we've described 2 stages. What stage are you looking forward to?
I almost wanted to cheat, as is my habit, and treat stages 18, 19, and 20 as one stage.
I knew you were going to do that.
Because for me, because it's those 3 stages almost form a 3-part story, but I haven't. I'm going to go with stage 21, the final stage into Paris, because it is going to be a beautiful finish to a beautiful race. It's an evening finish. It should finish sometime around 9:30 or so local time. Instead of turning in front of the Arc de Triomphe, they're going to go round it 10 times, which is going to provide some unique images that will stay in the memory forever, I think. And we'll get all the usual pomp and traditions. Kathy's talked about this already a little bit. You get the photo opportunities at the start of the stage with the jerseys. You get the team with the yellow jersey leading onto the Champs-Élysées. And the usual breathless finish with Cav winning in Paris, obviously, for what will be a 5th successive year.
Yeah, that's
funny,
awesome.
because I thought Sagan was going to win this.
Oh, it's going to be interesting to see that battle, but we'll talk more about that in just a second. So that's the parcours. That's what we're looking forward to. But the parcours of any Grand Tour are only a part of the story. It's the riders who really make up the story of any bicycle race. So, Tim, let's talk about some of the key players that we see this year. And why don't we start with you just talking about, obviously, Chris Froome.
Okay, so Chris Froome is the bookies' favourite. He's already beaten all the other big guns at least once at some point during this year, including seeing off arguably the biggest threat, the defending champion. And you know, it's easy to forget that he'd never won a major race before this year, but you know, he's been making up for lost time, hasn't he? He won the Tour of Oman, he won the Criterium International, he won the Tour of Romandy, he won the Criterium de Dauphiné. Yeah, the only real blip was losing out to Nibali at Tirreno Adriatico on the kind of ultra steep gradient that we won't actually see at this tour. And you know, it's hard to spot any real weakness. He can climb, he can time trial. He's shown that he's super cool tactically, and he has the support of the best stage race team in the peloton. It's by no means a foregone conclusion that he'll win, but he is the favourite with good reason.
Yeah, and you know, if he's the bookies' favourite, the other kind of bookies' favourite that's not too far behind him is one Alberto Contador. So, Kathy, why don't you give us a rundown on what you think about Alberto?
Well, good old Alberto. He's been quieter than usual this season because he hasn't really won anything, but I do have faith in him. What is interesting is I missed him so much last year because there was nobody attacking. And the thing about Contador is he can't help himself. He has to attack. So that in itself will really animate this year's tour. If he gets together with Valverde and Rodriguez early in the race to try to break the Sky train, which I think that, you know, I mean, that would be the smart thing to do. And he uses his own men wisely to, you know, send them out in a break or constantly attack, then we're not going to have this procession that everybody is terrified of. And he also has, you know, the tactical mind of Bjarne Riis, who he can change plans on a dime if things take a weird turn or something. Whereas, you know, Sky, for all their, you know, their strength and depth of strength in the team, I don't think they've ever shown any capacity for quick thinking in a race, their DSs or anything like that. So I'm seriously pinning my hopes on Birdie and Saxo to help make this tour one of the most exciting.
Yeah, you know what? Another Spaniard that could help with that mix, even though he's not on the same team as Alberto Contador, is Alejandro Valverde. He's another one that people are tipping to look at as one who will attack. He's obviously rested. He did not do the Giro this year just because he wanted to prepare for the Tour. He's 33 years old, and he missed the Tour in 2010 and 11 due to a doping suspension. And I'm not even sure that he's the strongest rider on his team. He did really show some positive signs at the Dauphiné with several attacks. And he is arguably going to be surrounded by one of the strongest teams, maybe next to Sky, with guys like Rui Costa, who just won the Tour de Suisse, and a young and very talented Nairo Quintana. So it'll be interesting to see how Valverde plays in the mix and how maybe Spanish nationalism helped defeat the Sky train. So we don't only have Great Britain and Spain here, but we have a veteran Tour winner in Cadel Evans. Tim, what do you think about what he's going to do in the Tour this year?
Yeah, this Cadel Evans, this could well be the last hurrah for him. He has a young whippersnapper in his own team, TJ Van Garderen, who's ready to take over at the first sign of weakness. And to be fair, the sands of time are very much against Cadel. He was already the oldest post-World War II winner when he won in 2011.
Right.
But at 36 now, if he won, he would become the oldest Tour winner ever. But having said that, Cadel's entire career has been about proving his doubters wrong. He's won the Tour de France, he's won the World Championships, he's one of a select group to have podiumed at all 3 Grand Tours, and he was third at the Giro, as he supposedly was there just to tune up, ready for the Tour de France. He fell away a little bit in the closing days, but he showed enough to suggest that he still has something, especially when the going demands that riders grit their teeth and battle on. So, is he going to win? No. He'll be there or thereabouts in both the time trials and in the mountains, but he probably doesn't quite have the legs or the acceleration to dominate in either. Could he podium, though? Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, and another guy who always kind of is there or thereabouts in the mountains and who we just briefly talked about was Joaquim Rodriguez. Kathy, what do you think his chances are, and what role do you think he'll play in the Tour this year?
It's interesting that he didn't want to ride the Giro and that he wanted to ride the Tour de France, because the Tour de France really isn't a race that plays to his strengths, because he's very much super steep climbs. That's where he just rides away from everybody, and he gets a little bit lost on the more gradual, longer climbs, which the Tour obviously has quite a lot of. That said, there are a few stages this year that Rodriguez could really light up. And do I think it can earn him a podium place? Not so much. But, he's motivated. Katusha are motivated. They're putting everything behind him. And I don't think he'll lose that much in the TTs because they're so short. And as with Contador, I'm really pinning my hopes on him sort of making things unpredictable with the way he attacks, because, nobody can let him go away, basically.
Yeah. And, Katusha, they really surprised us during the Giro, and they brought their B squad, and they're bringing their A squad to this Grand Tour. So who knows how good they're going to be. One guy that we haven't talked about yet, who is also really a GC contender, is Richie Porte. I mean, this guy was first at Paris-Nice. He was second at Criterium International. He was second in the Tour of the Basque Country. He was second at the Dauphiné behind his teammate Chris Froome. He's one of the best time trialists in the world. So I think he's really the plan B for if things go wrong for Team Sky. And excuse me.
That's Richie right now trying to get in the door.
Yeah, Richie was trying to call. So no, he's really plan B for Team Sky. He has publicly stated that he's there to support Chris Froome. And unlike kind of the Wiggins-Froome fiasco of last year, I think that this Team Sky is much more unified. These two guys seem to be actually pretty good friends and pretty good colleagues. So it'll be interesting to see how they work together to, improve Froome's chances of winning the Tour. All right, now, but this isn't all about, the yellow jersey, though. It's also about the green jersey. And this year, almost more than any other year that I can remember, we have a group of guys that are coming to try to win the green jersey. It's going to be a super exciting competition, and I think maybe even more exciting, and a lot of people are saying this, more exciting than the GC competition. So we can't talk about the green jersey without talking about Mark Cavendish. And
Man
Tim,
crush alert.
and Tim, of course, we're going to let you talk about Mark Cavendish this time, since I did last time when we did the Giro preview.
Oh dear. As you say, Chris, I think the green jersey competition is sizing up to be really exciting this year. I think Cav will face arguably the strongest array of rivals that he has ever faced at any Grand Tour. Sagan, Greipel, Kittel, and countless others who could easily sneak a stage win. But he's coming fresh off his 5-star performance at the Giro. As we said earlier, he won the British National Championships today with a ride that was very uncharacteristic of Cav. He was aggressive on the climbs, such as they were. He even put in a couple of attacks. So I think he's shown a few more edges, and he's shown that he's in great form. He's also going to have, I think, the strongest lead-out train he's had for a couple of years. He's going to have Michał Kwiatkowski, who's Polish national champion, Sylvain Chavanel, Tony Martin, again another world champion, Matteo Trentin, and Gert Stigmans, obviously, who led him out so well at the Giro. There are a lot of lumpy stages in the early part of the race that favour Sagan, so he might struggle a little bit, certainly early on. But I would put good money on him winning at least 3 stages and then lighting up the fireworks on the Champs-Élysées.
Yeah, I mean, Quick-Step has really built a team around him solely for him, so it'll be interesting to see how he takes advantage of that this year. But there are other sprinters, and there are other really good lead-out trains, including one Argo Shimano, who have a couple of cards to play. And Kathi, John Degenkolb is one of those cards, right?
Yeah, I mean, they've got Kittel and Degenkolb coming, which is people think is a bit strange, but I mean, they're all about the sprint, so I think that they're probably just hedging their bets, and also they're 2 completely different kinds of sprinters. But the reason I picked Degenkolb is because he's strong as a horse. God knows I love strong riders. I think that's established now. And I mean, I could even see him making the transition to the classics one day. That's the kind of rider I think he is. And we've got some stages, that sprint stages supposedly, that actually are really tough to get over for a pure sprinter, and they rock and roll along the way. And I think that Degenkolb will take all those in his stride. I'm actually wondering if his battle won't be head-to-head with Cav, but actually with Sagan, because they can both hold their own in there. And so I'm thinking, in some of these mountain stages, or some of these, medium mountain stages particularly, when they're possibly racing for intermediate points, I think it'll be more maybe, between him and Sagan than him and Cav. So I think it'll be interesting. I think winning the green jersey isn't going to be straightforward this year, and I think that he's got a good chance because he's so strong.
Yeah, I think the guy that has the best shot of winning it, just based on his ability to claim points wherever in the parcours, is Peter Sagan. I mean, everything Tim said about Cavendish, except he can ride a bike on top of a car and over mountains, and he can park his bike on top of a car.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, Peter Sagan, we have not seen a rider like him in a long time. I mean, maybe Merckx. He's the all-around rider, and so he's going to be claiming points. He's going to be going up high mountains where all these other sprinters really can't go, and he'll be claiming all those points. And he's shown us in lots of different places that he's very capable of sprinting with the best when it's flat as well. He won both the points classifications at both California and Switzerland this year. And for me, and I know you're going to hate this, Tim, but I think he's got a 70-30 chance of taking the green jersey, really depending on how Cav does. If Cav can win 5 stages, then I think it gets a little interesting. But I really think that Sagan for green, barring any accidents or unforeseen performances, is maybe a lock almost. So.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. I've had a look at the numbers and done some projections, and I think Cav will need to win at least 5 stages to win the green jersey. And I think the thing that will determine it is not so much how well he goes against Sagan, but how well he goes against Greipel and Kittel.
Yeah.
Because if those guys start to win a stage here and there, then I think the green jersey lies very much in Sagan's hands.
Yep. And you know what? For those of you who are playing fantasy, what you got to calculate is the points between winning the green jersey and winning the number of stages. Because I think Cav will win more stages than Sagan, but I think Sagan will win the green jersey. So you got to do the math there to see who's really going to give you the best points.
That's where I'm going wrong. I can't do math. That's why I do so badly at these things. Anyway.
All right. So there's always some guys who stand out in the tour for their performances, whether they go, they try to sneak away or whatever. So Tim, who are you, tipping your hat to kind of keep an eye on this year?
Yeah, I definitely riders to keep an eye on, and also potentially an interesting pick for fantasy cycling or fantasy Tour de France. Sylvain Chavanel, teammate of Cav, so you've got Cav and Chav. He's in good form. He's just won his 5th French National Time Trial Championships, and it'll be interesting to see what role he plays in the team. I think on sprint days, he'll probably be used more in the train, and also just to cover anyone who tries to make a counter-attacking move in the final 15 kilometres. We saw him do that, a little bit of that in the Dauphiné. But there are also plenty of opportunities for him to go stage hunting. He's in great form this season. He won the overall at the 3 days of Japan. He was 5th at Paris-Nice, and he's won 3 stages in the Tour before. So he knows what it takes to win in the biggest race in the world. And along with Cav and Tony Martin, that is, he's one of 3 genuine stage-winning prospects that OPQS have, and I'm not sure many other teams can claim that.
Yeah, those first 3 days on Corsica could be really interesting for a guy like Sylvain Chavanel. So, all right, what about you, Kathy? Who are you keeping your eye on?
Well, I suspect you two are both going to laugh at this, but mine is going to be Andy Schleck.
Okay.
Now stop it.
You might need a sharp eye to see it.
Oh wow! As long as you're not picking him for your fantasy team, I think he's a good one to watch.
Have I picked my fantasy team already? Oh, I can't even remember. Anyway, I don't think I did.
So why are you keeping your eye on Andy?
Well, you know what? He's not going to win the Tour. We know that. He's not even going to be on the podium. He's not even going to be anywhere near the podium. But that, you know what? That doesn't mean he can't animate this race if he puts his mind to it. And it's his mind that he definitely needs to put to it because, he's a great climber. It's just all in his head. Now, as I said before, he's apparently reconned stage 2 in Corsica. Does he know something we don't? Probably. Maybe not. I would really love him to do well on the mountain stages because, I think the way he went over Galibier a couple years ago was just epic. And he can do it. And the fact is, nobody, he's not a GC threat. They might let him go away. Mm-hmm. And, I'm thinking he might take one of the big stages like Ventoux or maybe stage 19, over the Madeleine, all that other stuff. He could very well do it. I don't think it's as crazy as it sounds. Let's face it, love him or hate him, I really missed him last year. I missed him and Contador. And I think that he really does have something to give to this race if he just gives it.
At the beginning, Kathy, we talked about how the Tour de France is the world's biggest stage. And this really would be the perfect stage for Andy Schleck to say, I'm back.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And just kind of stick it to everybody. I'm back.
Yeah, and maybe, just maybe, he'll target the polka dot jersey.
Yeah, that would be great.
I
would
think
love
that would
to see
be
him
really
at the podium
good.
At the end. Yeah.
I'm feeling quite passionate about this now.
All right. So the guy that I'm looking at is Nairo Quintana. And this is the guy who won the Tour of the Basque Country earlier this year on Movistar. And I really think that he's going to be the Tour de France version of Carlos Bentancur from the Giro. He's young. He's Colombian. He climbs like a superstar. I think he might actually be in better form than his team leader, Alejandro Valverde. So this could be a TJ Van Garderen and Cadel Evans situation at Team Movistar that everybody's, kind of ignored up to this point. He's 23, so I could easily see him winning the white jersey. So he's one, for those of you who are playing fantasy, that you might want to look at. He's not cheap, but I think he's gonna rake in the points. So.
I think Movistar are going to be an interesting team to follow because they've got Valverde, they've got Quintana, and they've also got Rui Costa, who's perfectly capable of a good placing in the top 10.
Yeah, if you picked all 3 of those guys for your fantasy team, you wouldn't be doing bad, I don't think. So.
And they've got my favorite little Andre Amador, who, is really tenacious on those breakaways. So,
And he, Kathy, if you haven't
Yes?
picked your fantasy team yet, is relatively inexpensive.
I have picked him, I'm almost positive. Because, after I've done the math, obviously, I then pick them by looks.
That's not a bad way to go.
There you go.
All right. So there's there's some key questions coming into this race that we need to ask. And I think that the first one is about who Kathy talked about, Contador. He wasn't at his best at the Dauphiné, I don't think. And the TT performance, for Contador standards was kind of abysmal. Tim, do you think that was a blip, or do you think Contador is going to come with his A game and just give Froome, maybe more than he can handle?
Yes and yes, I think. I'm yet to be convinced that he is anywhere near the rider he was before his suspension, and we can all speculate why that might be. But he is still an incredible talent, and as he showed at the Vuelta last year, even slightly below his best, he is a proper street fighter who can pull rabbits out of hats. And I say this as the utmost compliment. He is like Cadel Evans with afterburners.
All right. Well, my one question is: has he won a race this year that any of us have heard of? And the answer to that is no. He was second to Froome in Oman. He was third at Torino Adriatico, and he was 10th at the Dauphiné. And as far as I know, the only thing he's won this year is stage 6 of the Tour de San Luis. So for July, for me, for Contador, I'm having my doubts, because usually in the years that he's done well in the race, he's also done really well earlier in the year. But maybe he's saved it all for July. Maybe he's kind of reached that age where it's like, I got to, all my energy's got to be focused on one race, and that race is going to be the Tour de France. So, Kathy, what are your thoughts on Contador?
Well, I think he's coming to this tour with something to prove, and as Tim says, he's a proper street fighter. He's not going to go down without taking a few people down with him, I think. It's first tour after his ban. Everybody's speculating about his performances so far this year. The man has pride, so he's gonna just ride himself inside and out. He knows he can get the better of Froome because he did in the Vuelta. Although we can say that Froome obviously had been drained from the tour beforehand, but he has beat Froome. You can't think that wouldn't have some sort of effect on him. And I think that he's really going to prove himself, and it'll be like Christmas in Adventure Town.
All right, so we'll see what happens with Contador. I really hope that he comes with good form, because it will definitely make the GC battle much more interesting. Now, it's not all about the GC contenders. There's a bunch of guys that are the not quite yet GC contenders who are coming to the Tour, the likes of Fuglsang or Bauk Malema or Coppel. So, Tim, who do you think who's going to be maybe a breakthrough rider this year in the Tour de France?
Yeah, Jakob Fuglsang, meh. Jerome Koppel has been the next big thing for a while, but actually he's almost been superseded by Pierre Rolland, who he's been top 10 in the last 2. He's won stages on Alpe d'Huez and La Toussuire, I think it was last year. If he's overcome the minor hiccup that he had at the Dauphiné, then he's certainly one to watch out for. And then the other 2 I'd look out for are, depending on team orders, you've already mentioned, Chris, Nairo Quintana, and then the one really for me is Garmin's Dan Martin.
Yeah.
He was the winner of Liège-Bastogne-Liège. He won the Volta a Catalunya. He was in reasonable form at the Tour de Suisse. I think he was something like 8th overall. And depending how Ryder Hejjedal goes, he could easily emerge as the lead Sharpie. Yeah,
and we talked before about how Garmin could be kind of the stealth team, that the little engine that could, if you will. Mm-hmm. I was thinking about guys like Rein Terme, who was 11th overall on GC in 2011, and he was supposed to be like one of these guys who was the next big thing. And so I think he's got a lot to prove to be able to stay, on the team that he's on and be at the level that people think he should be at. So it'll be interesting to see what he thinks. Now, Kathy, what do you think? I know that you don't think that Fuglsang has it either.
No, I definitely don't. I put him in the same category as Robert Gesink.
Yeah.
Everybody talks him up. You hear his name all the time, except when it comes to who won. You don't hear that. Something always seems to happen that means he can't fulfill his potential. I'm actually inclined to agree with Tim. I think Dan Martin and Pierre Rolland, I mean, they're really ready to make that leap. And, this could be the tour that makes their career for the next few years.
Yeah, I could see Dan Martin going on the attack on that double Alpe d'Huez stage and taking it, and Garmin just being through. I mean, that's going to be the stage of stages that people want to win. And if they even won just that stage, that would be a huge success.
Well, they would never have to buy a drink in France again.
That's right. All right, so we talked about this a little bit already, Tim, but let's just kind of cement our thoughts here about Sagan versus Cav versus the other sprinters in the green jersey competition. How do we think this is going to pan out ultimately?
Yeah, I think as we've said already, I think what we will see is we'll see Cav win more of the out and out sprint stages, and I'm not discounting Greipel and Kittel by any means. I think they'll also pick up stages as well, but Sagan will pick up points consistently in places where the others can't. Given the nature of the course as well, again, as we were mentioning earlier, don't be surprised if guys like the three amigos, so Contador, Valverde and Rodriguez, are occupying high places in the green jersey. Quite deep into the race.
Yeah, and for me, I said this before, but it really depends on how many stages Cav wins. And let's just pretend that he wins 5 stages. How interesting would that be, Kathy?
Pretend he wins 5 stages. How interesting would that be? Not very. That's all I've got to say. I mean, let's face it. I've said it before. I'm not a big sprint fan myself. But, I'm hoping that it's going to be a really exciting, because there's so many strong sprinters in this tour. But my money is on Sagan. I mean, he can pick up so many points where the other guys are just going to be in the gruppetto, and and he's just a monster. He just wants it all. Yeah. And I think that for him, riding onto the Champs in the green jersey on the 100th edition of the tour is, he's going to love that. And will he win on the Champs? I'd love it if he did, not because I don't like Cav, but because I actually love Sagan.
Yeah.
Podium pinching and all. I love Sagan.
So, Tim, let's make this deal. If Cav wins 5 stages,
oh no,
you need to talk to the missus, and you need to float over the English Channel and join Kathy and I on the Champs for the final stage.
Oh, I would love to.
So you talk to her about that. I don't know if the probability is very high. She might go for that. So show her all the data and everything, and then maybe you can convince her. Yeah. That would be awesome.
Let her do the math.
All right. Finally, we heard this week that Wigo was saying that, I don't know if he was saying he would never race the Tour de France again, or if he was saying that he would never make the sacrifices necessary to try to win the thing again.
I think it was that he wouldn't make the sacrifices to try to win it again.
Yeah. So Tim, what do you think about that?
It was almost disarmingly honest. I think a lot of what he said. He talked about the motivation, and I think we've talked about this before. He achieved so much last year. He'd always talked about winning the Tour de France, but not necessarily winning 3 or 4 or 5. He's way too old for that. And given that he's 33, he's getting on in cycling years. And he's got Chris Froome breathing down his neck, or arguably ahead of him now. The writing's on the wall. I think what we'll see is that there's a divorce from Sky impending, and I do just wonder if he might just return to Garmin, as a mentor for guys like Talansky and Dan Martin.
Wow. I would be shocked if he went back to Garmin.
I would too, but that would be incredible.
I would be shocked.
I wouldn't be shocked though if Vaughters took him back, because Vaughter has always doted on how talented he thinks Wiggins is. So that would be interesting. So, I think he'll race again, the Tour de France again. I don't think that he'll race the Tour again as a GC contender for Sky. So he'd obviously, if he wanted to do GC again, he'd have to leave Sky. Because if you think about Sky, I mean, we had Froome, who's, right on the heels of Wiggins, and we have Port, who's right on the heels of Froome, and who knows who's behind Port, right? We got other guys. Uran's back there too. So that team, it's just hard to be king of the mountain on Sky, I would imagine. So, Kathy, what are your thoughts on Wiggins here? I know how much you love Wiggins.
This could get me into trouble, but
Be kind.
I'm going to throw caution to the wind, and I'm not going to swear, unlike him. Right. It is realistic for him to say that he probably wouldn't win another Grand Tour or Tour de France. That said, earlier this year he said the Giro was the race he most wanted to win. Then he said he'd do the double. Okay, both of those have gone by the wayside now. He's not talking about any of that anymore. Now he says he's targeting the Tour of Britain and the World Championship TT, which I think the World Championship TT, that's kind of realistic, but he'll have to get through Tony Martin.
And Fabian Cancellara and Taylor Phinney. I mean, there's going to be some guys
Taylor
there.
Phinney, I suspect Cancellara not... I can't believe I'm about to say this.
I put her in a corner.
Cancellara is concentrating on the road race, so that's what he's going to win this year. Yeah. Then, we hear, he wants to win Paris-Roubaix. That's been his dream, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, he'd have to gain about twice his body weight to keep from rattling off the cobbles. But, everybody talks about how honest he is and everything, but he's always just talking big and bad, and then he changes his mind. And I don't actually believe anything he says, because I don't think he knows what he wants. I don't think he knows. I think he seems, in a way, kind of sad, as in not pathetic, but as in sorrowful. I think it's really sad that he just seems to be rudderless at the moment. He doesn't know what he wants to do, and then he'll talk himself up, and then he'll leave, and then he'll go, I never really wanted that anyway. And you know what I mean? It's kind of like, if you don't know, shut up. Just surprise people. I don't know, but who knows what
well,
he wants.
one thing we know about Wiggins, he has a huge engine. He has incredible talent, and when he really puts his mind to something and he focuses on it, I mean, last year what he did was incredible. It just was simply incredible. So you're right. He needs to find that thing that he's really passionate about, that he is willing to kind of put all his cards on the table and make sacrifices for. And he's got a lot of things competing with that, with his family and all the other things that he's got going on. So it'll be interesting to see what course Wiggins takes in the next couple of years. All right. Before we leave the Tour de France, of course, we always have to talk about the wild card teams that are invited to this race. And this year we have Cofidis and Europcar and Soja Sun. And so I'm going to talk about Cofidis really quick. Kathy's going to cover Europcar, and then Tim will talk about Soja Sun. So Cofidis this year, I call them Team Coke Can, because their kits this year look like a Coke can, and they really do need a metal pull tab at the top of the kit. That would, even if their helmets were like
on the
silver,
helmet.
that would really set it off.
It'd be brilliant.
Anyway, they have, the Tour de France for them, that is their race. Basically, their whole season is centered around trying to do as best they can at this race. And they recently recruited Christophe Lamavelle from Garmin, and he was 10th on GC in 2009. They also picked up Jerome Capel, who was 14th in 2011. I would expect former Contador Lieutenant Daniel Navarro to ride for his own ambitions this year, and so he'll probably be the team leader. But I think it'll be really between Navarro and Estonian Rein Terame, who we talked about earlier, to see who's going to be their GC leader. Terame was 11th in 2011, and if he's not doing well on GC, I definitely expect Terame to be going for polka dots. So I could see the polka dot jersey being a huge goal for Cofidis, which then brings us to Europcar and Mr. Thomas Vogler's team, Kathy.
Yes, I mean, it wouldn't be a tour without Europcar and Tommy the Tongue. Vogler has just won the Route du Sud. He won the Queen Stage, so he's in good form after that terrible crash earlier in the spring. And it doesn't seem to me that he's going to have that long stint in the yellow jersey like he has every once in a while. But there are definitely stages he can win. And, if he goes for the King of the Mountain jersey like he did last year, I mean, that's going to be a sight to see, because not only, will the tongue be all over the place, but, he's really smart the way he races those things. So he's going to animate the race up until Paris. The other co-leader would be Pierre Rolland, and he's, I think, going to do very well on this tour. Mont Ventoux is on Bastille Day. One of my favorite holidays, actually, although I am not French. And I expect he's really going to try to win this for France. And I also think, as I think somebody's already said, the Alpe d'Huez stage might just be tailor-made for him. And then we have the French-Canadian David Vuilo, probably said that wrong, and he's been given the nod for the Tour after he had an excellent performance in the Dauphiné. He won the opening stage and he wore the yellow jersey for about 3 days. So he'll be a really good lieutenant for Vogler and Roland, and he could have some breakaway moments of his own. So Europe Car is going to do what Europe Car always does, and they're going to make France proud.
Kathy, I'm really kind of hoping that Vogler does repeat in the polka dots, because when he wears polka dots, he does it right. He does the helmet, the kit, the bike, the shoes. It's all polka dots. It's just polka dot the glasses, everything.
See,
that's the way to do it.
I think that's kind of wrong. I do.
I love it. No! Polka everywhere. All right. So, Tim, how about Soja-san? What are they bringing this year?
Soja-san. All right. They're very much a home team. 22 of the 23 riders on their roster are French.
Oh, wow.
The other one's a Lithuanian whose name I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce. And they haven't really got any big names anymore. As you've already mentioned, Chris, they lost their nominal GC leader Jérôme Coppel to Cofidis. He was 14th in 2011. He was 21st last year. Their GC man is likely to be Jonathan Iver, who won Étoile de Bessèges and a couple of stages at the Vuelta a Andalusia in February. And more recently, he showed good form, coming second in the Tour de Luxembourg last week. He'll get help in the mountains from Brice Fayou, who won a mountain stage in Andorra on his Tour debut in 2009. He's been putting a little bit of altitude into his legs at the Tour de Suisse. And also Julien Alvarez, who's been showing some pretty good form as well. He was 7th overall in Luxembourg. He's likely to pop up quite a lot in breakaways as well. And finally, we might also see the veteran Jimmy Engouvin. He's more of a prologue than a longer time trial specialist. But he's won the 4 days of Dunkirk. He won the Luxembourg prologue for the 4th time this year. And most notably of all, he was the Lanterne Rouge at last year's Tour.
Yeah, so that should be interesting to see what those guys try to do. So I love all these teams that get invited that aren't World Tour teams. So Tim, there was a whole Katusha Pro Team license fiasco, and so now there's only 3 wildcard teams. But if there was a 4th, who would have you invited?
I think for sure I'd have taken one of the Pro Continental teams who don't have the benefit of having a home Grand Tour of their own, so not a French, an Italian or a Spanish team. Maybe I'd have taken someone like NetApp Enduro. They've got a nice combination of experience and youth. They've got people like Jan Barter and Leopold Koenig, who won the Queen stage at the Tour of California last month, and he's also kind of caught my eye a couple of times at the Tour of Britain.
Yeah, and Kathy, you and I would have picked IAM because we like their kits, right?
Well, yes, and I just like that, I can call them I Am Cats. There's nothing better than a good nickname. So.
All right. This Tour de France is going to be absolutely brilliant.
Yay!
And it's super exciting. We're excited to be following the Tour. I'm going to be going to the Tour. I'm going to be seeing Kathy in Paris at the end of the Tour.
And Ant's coming as well?
Yes, it's going to be great. So let us just tell you what kind of you can expect in the next 4 weeks from the VeloVoices. Tim, why don't we start with you just telling us about what people can expect on the blog?
I guess anyone that's followed us for any of the previous Grand Tours will be fairly familiar with how we do things. In the week leading up to the Tour, we will have previews of all the teams. We'll highlight the key stages and also do a bit of a feature on the key contenders. Then during the race, we will have daily previews and race recaps and various odds and sods of tactical analysis. And then post-race, we'll have 3 or 4 days of analysis and discussion. So if you're suffering withdrawal symptoms after Paris, then we will wean everyone off these slowly.
That's right. And of course, just like we did in the Giro, we're going to be having our Tour de France Fantasy League through Velo Games. You can go right now and sign up. You got 6 days left to register your team. All you got to do is pick 9 riders, and then you go and you select VeloVoices out of one of the featured leagues. We're the best featured league, right, Kathy?
Absolutely.
All the cool kids are signing up
Yeah.
For the VeloVoices Mini League.
I have heard that VeloCast have a league team on Velo Games, and I think we should just start trash talking.
All right, we will start trash talking VeloCast tomorrow on Twitter. We've already mentioned John Galloway in the podcast.
Do you know what?
I'm going to send him a picture of me in a mankini holding up a sign that says, join the VeloVoices Fantasy League and not the VeloCast one.
Do you know what, though? I'll bet you they don't take the bait.
Yeah, I bet they don't either.
Just to annoy us.
Yeah, they're not going to mention us on their podcast.
No, they never do.
All right, so we got that going on. I think, Tim, you looked today, and we already have like 190 people signed up for that. I didn't even know what the number
something
is.
like
So, and that's already way more than we had signed up for the Giro, and we still have a week to go. So be sure to sign up. My team this year is called Holding On to the Team Car. So your goal, if you sign up, should be at least to beat Panache. You're not going to beat Cherie because she'll pick her names out of the magic hat, and who knows what's going to happen with the rest of us. So, Tim, I'm hoping that you'll squeak by me this time.
I'm hoping to have more than 5 finishes, I think.
And Kathi and Anthony will have to team up again for Team Fondant so that they can do their thing.
Exactly.
All right.
Also, by the way, we will have prizes for the podium winners.
What are some of the prizes, Kathi? Have you gotten them all done
yet?
Well,
I don't know yet.
Okay.
but there will be prizes, and they may be valuable. They may not be. I don't know. But
you guys have to. Yeah. People have to understand that the VeloVoices don't make any money doing VeloVoices. We just do it because we love it. And so sometimes getting prizes, we have to rely on the generosity of others, or we have to go into our own pocketbooks to get it. But we will have prizes for people who podium at
We
at
will,
our tour.
and they will be so cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. One cool prize that we do have right now that we are giving away, if you'll just go basically enter, is we're giving away a Europe car jersey signed by none other than Mr. 1000 Grimaces himself, Thomas Vogler. And the way you win this is you just need to answer this question. The question is, which jersey did Thomas Vogler win in the 2012 Tour de France?
The answer may be in this podcast.
Yes, it might be in this podcast. And if you follow cycling at all, you should know the answer to that. And
or if you know how to Google.
Yes, or if you know how to Google. All you have to do is email the answer to velovoices@gmail.com, and you are entered to win. We will do a random drawing. I don't know how much time is left, Kathi, in the contest.
I think it ends on the 28th. So so we've got a week. While you're doing your Velo games, then go on to the VeloVoices and do your entry for the jersey, which is actually one of his.
Excellent.
It's tiny. And
you
he
can
has
frame
worn
it, or you can have your baby wear it, or whatever.
You could do whatever you wanted with it. But it's a tiny little Thomas Vogler jersey signed, and we're giving it away. And all I can say is, props to Cherie for, basically roping him like a little doggy and ripping it off him. So
I was really sad to hear that friends of VeloVoices can enter, but family members and VeloVoices members can't enter. So I can't win the jersey, and my wife can't win the jersey, and Kathi and Tim and their family can't win the jersey. But all your friends can, so make sure that you enter.
Exactly. There were some questions last night as if I could fix the giveaway. And I'm just going to say right now, I have nothing to do with prize draws.
That's all Cherie, and Cherie cannot be corrupted. So
No.
She cannot be corrupted. She is an honest person. So she will randomly draw the winner.
As opposed to me, who's a liar.
That's right, because I'd be like, Kathi, pick my wife. All right.
Hey, and then after the tour, Chris, you're going to auction off your VeloVoices mankini, aren't you?
That's going to go for a lot of money. So one thing that is happening at the end of the tour, Tim, is we are going to have a party on the Saturday before the final stage on the Champs. The VeloVoices and all of you guys are invited. We don't know where it's going to be yet, but we are going to have a party in Paris at a pub or a restaurant or whatever, and we will let you know the details of that coming up in the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely.
So if you're going to be in Paris,
and a lot of you guys are.
And a lot of you are. The night before the final stage of the tour, come join the VeloVoices in celebrating the 100th Tour de France, and it'll be great. So that's what we have for tonight. We are so excited for the tour. It's going to be a great 3 weeks. Just keep your eye on VeloVoices.com for any announcements. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/VeloVoices. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at VeloVoices. And we will talk to you during the tour. We're going to have several different podcasts, just like we did during the Giro, during the tour. Tim and Kitty, thanks for the great night this evening. I'm looking forward to the next 3 weeks.
Yay!
Good night, everybody.
VeloVoices. Many voices, one passion. Pro cycling for fans by fans.